this could be. I haven't seen my Super Nintendo since 2003. That's alright, I don't mind. I've got a Switch in the old switcheroo. My friend Mike and Jaymo too.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Old Switcheroo, where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Play along on our epic quest to research and review all 250 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro Catalog. Today we are land roving our way across Phantasy Star IV for the Sega Genesis in an episode we are calling Hazy Cosmic Jive. Mike, you get my Bowie reference?
No.
Well, there's a Phantasy Star man waiting in the Zoom. I think he's gonna blow our minds. Um, so welcome back to the show, everybody. YouTube's War Boss 5, aka our friend Ryan. Ryan, how goes your daily 2025 doom scroll?
Oh, as harrowing as always.
It's just like the Phantasy Star in a ruined world. I'm like, you know what? Not looking too bad right now.
I was saying that exact thing to my therapist this morning.
But so Ryan, actually had a quick unrelated question. You had mentioned on I think our first episode we did together that you kind of consider yourself like a theater kid. Have you done any voice acting?
Yeah, I've done a little bits here and there. There's a couple of there's a I've done a couple of Fallout mods.
Oh,
One that's still in production called Fallout Miami. That's going to be basically an entire new game in the Fallout 4 engine set down in Miami. I play one of the characters on there.
shut the front door. That sounds amazing.
It does look really good. I'm looking forward to it. It's supposed to be on the scale with Fallout London, if you heard about that coming out a couple of months ago, I want to say now. But I am also working on right now doing an audio recording for a series of audiobooks.
Oh,
If I can plug them
no, do it.
momentarily.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because, like, one of our very first most popular shorts was your imitation of the Joe and Mac devs talking about putting like a power up just out of reach. Like, great idea, boss. So I was like, I feel like you're good at that kind of thing. So what's the project?
So the books it's a book series called Mortziel's Lost and Found, written by Nick Chenemo Smith. Great guy. Been working with him. I've done the full audio recording for the first book in the series called The One-Armed Wizard. The series they're kind of like fantasy detective stories, very Dungeons and Dragons-esque, following the adventures of a non-binary tiefling detective named Keivel Mortziel and his new apprentice slash sidekick, Talavera Leewood, who is an elvish wizard with only one hand. She has an arcane prosthetic, replacing one of
Nice.
her hands.
Oh, so it's arcane. So it's like a Luke arm. It can move and stuff.
Well, it's basically a mage hand attached to a bracelet that she wears on her wrist. And that's why the first book's called The One-Armed Wizard. It's all about her and her engaging Kaivel to help her find her missing hand.
Oh,
But it's a lot of fun. It's a really delightful little book series. The first three books are available in, I think, digital download and paperback. Only the book one's audiobook is currently done. I'm working on book two now, and once that's done, I'll start working on book three. But unfortunately, we're talking like 60 to 70 hours well, not 60 to 70 hours. Like I forget the exact amount. I want to say 16 hours, 17 hours of recording in order to get this done. So it is a long-term project.
that's nothing. I spent more than that playing Phantasy Star 4 this week.
Yeah, it felt like you could definitely spend the time.
Yeah. All right, Mike, you ready to unite against the literal forces of darkness?
I guess we can go against them for a change. Let's go.
Hey, let's talk about Phantasy Star IV, The End of the Millennium, released for the Sega Genesis in 1994. All As described in Nintendo Switch Online, the fourth entry in Sega's iconic RPG series, in a harsh, unforgiving world, recovering from an advanced civilization's collapse, the young hunter Chaz challenges a great evil with the help of 9 steadfast allies. Let's take a look at the box art since it was often people's first impressions. We have the Japanese and North American box art. Both feature 3 of our protagonist characters kind of posing heroically in the foreground. And then in the Japanese one, you have a visualization of the Dark Force enemy. And then in the North American, you have a kind of mountain range in the background. What do you guys think of these covers?
I think I've got to go to the Japanese one.
It's cool.
Yeah, first of all, having villain in the background looming is a lot cooler than a mountain. But I think also what struck me with the US design is it just feels weirdly like generic
Yeah.
to the point where just like I feel like we've seen this kind of a cover. Like there's not really style to them, and I feel like there's more to that on the Japanese cover, at least a little bit. Maybe some of that is just that like Japanese art style isn't as common here, what with this being not Japan.
Right.
And so maybe like that lets it feel a bit more distinct in a way that it wouldn't necessarily if you go through a lot of the same kind of style, but at least like that stands out to me a bit more.
What Mike's referring to is that we got like manga style from Japan and then North American. Ryan, you'd agree with me. It's almost like side of the van, like photorealism kind of painting.
Yeah, getting definite stoner panel van wizard style artwork here, absolutely. And it's not the characters, too.
Yeah.
Chaz looks like 10 years older. Rune is completely different looking. And oh God, what was her name?
Rika.
Rika, that's right. And Rika is not a cat girl. She's just a scantily clad woman with what appear to be clawed gauntlets, which is
Yeah,
like,
they even lost like the iconic pink hair. It's just like, what'd you do? What'd you do? I think I'm with you boys, like Japanese cover all the way, but especially because I think so much of this game is you in battle looking at some big monster that's looming over the top half of your screen. And I feel like the Japanese cover having the big monster looming over the top half of the cover really kind of communicates the visual language of the game. I'm with you guys.
also the American cover is lying to us because Chaz is using a shield and a sword, and you are not allowed to do that in the game, which it's like, oh, if I want a shield, the most I can have is a dagger. Great.
Yeah, I think there is at one point a short sword that you can wield with one hand, but it's not satisfying. I thought you meant it's lying as in it's referred to as the explosive finale, and there were many more Phantasy Star games after this, but this is the end of this story arc that's been going on 1 through 4. So this was developed and published by Sega. Its director was Reiko Kodama, also known as Phoenix Ray. She was a central figure in the dev team of all the 90s Phantasy Star games. We enjoyed her work in Season 2 when we played through the colorful zones of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and we will enjoy her design work again when we cover Altered Beast in a future episode. Ryan, are you an Altered Beast guy?
I played it a little bit when I was a kid. Don't have many memories of it, although I have watched like speed runs of it, and it looks cool. The powers are a little weird and arbitrary, and there's a lot more muscly men than you'd think you'd see, but
Yeah. Well, they're the Altered Beasts. But so Reiko is notable on our show not only for being, Mike, I think the first female director of a game we've covered, right? I think this is a first. Nothing jumps to mind.
Yeah, nothing jumps to mind.
And, sadly, she's also one of the first devs we've covered who has since passed away. She died in 2022 at the age of 58. And Sega and all of its fans are really sad to have lost her. But I really am glad that we got to enjoy her work for this episode. Got some knowledge is power Nintendo trivia for you guys. Oh, I guess Sega trivia. In addition to featuring several cameos of characters from Phantasy Stars 1 through 3, there are some fun Easter eggs to be found. Mike, in Shining Force, and actually Ryan, because you like Shining Force, y'all remember you could go up to the bookshelves and like there was fun book titles?
Yes.
mhm.
Did you guys mess with the bookshelves in this game?
Oh, I tried.
Okay. Didn't find anything good, Mike?
Found a couple of fun things hiding around in the background.
Did you find the Sega references, Ryan?
Oh no, I don't think I read those. Oh, I did see the Game Gear. I did find WoW a Game Gear. That one I did find.
That's in the ruined town after it's like some evil has attacked and destroyed most of the buildings. Everyone's holed up in these little inns, and you can find a Game Gear, which I'm sure kids don't know what a Game Gear is. It was Sega's Game Boy with
Mhm.
notoriously short battery life.
Beautiful graphics, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I tried bookshelves and it would just be like, oh, there's some books. And I kind of stopped.
What's weird about the way this game is programmed is that each half of the bookshelf, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that when the protagonist character approaches the bookshelf, his body kind of covers half of it. Those are distinct hitboxes. You can find different things on each end of the bookshelf itself, which was a weird choice. I've never really seen a game that do that. But so there's a number of fun Sega Easter eggs. There's a children's book called A Day with Echo, Echo the Dolphin we covered in season 2. It's a children's book, Run Hedgehog Run, which obviously is a Sonic reference. Golden Axe Volume 3. That one was interesting because Golden Axe 3 had come out recently.
I find it more fascinating that it calls that a children's picture book. And I have never in my life seen a picture book use the term volume in it.
I mean, Golden Axe would be a pretty questionable book for kids. Like those games are pretty violent, I
And
think.
yet it still says children's picture book.
Oh, but you are missing the best one, though.
What's that?
This is not necessarily a bookcase. This is a cabinet because the cabinets have reactions too. A lot of them will say, oh, it's plates, or the majority of like if you walk up to like a wardrobe and you click on it, Chaz will say, oh, it's you shouldn't go through people's cabinets,
Without
without their
permission.
permission,
Yeah.
except one.
Know what you're talking about.
In the back room of the schoolhouse, Han's girlfriend's cabinet, if you go up to it and click on it, because she is made by the game to understand she's very beautiful. But
Yes.
if you click on it, it's like you shouldn't go through someone's cabinets without their permission, unless or something like that. And then Alice basically slaps him on the back of the head.
Yeah. Very, very much like pervy 90s anime jokes
Oh, very much, yeah.
with the scolding, older woman. I thought Alice kind of gave Misato energy. I don't know if you guys watched. I know Mike watched Evangelion. Did you watch Evangelion, Ryan? No.
No, I could never. It wasn't my kind of thing. And I've seen a lot of people talk about Evangelion. I don't know if she gives Masato energy. I would say she's closer to Urza Scarlet from Fairy Tale.
Okay.
And that sort of like ass-kicking mom kind of character who like slaps the idiot man children in her charge.
Yeah. I had mixed feelings about all that. We'll get into it, but it's like she is simultaneously sexualized at every turn, but also the most competent and knowledgeable person in the room.
Yeah. You literally have to sexualize her to continue the story.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well, so this game, this pervy little game, was originally developed for the Sega CD, and it would have had a couple of more features that would have been really helpful. It would have had fully animated cutscenes as opposed to single frames. It would have had voice acting. It would have had 3D dungeons like the first Phantasy Star. And boys, they also cut the map feature. And the code for the in-game map is still on the cartridge. They just didn't, hook it up. Did you guys kind of get lost sometimes playing this game?
No, or at least not in a physical sense, but that was also because I had the manual, and the manual has the map, and real quickly, um, right, to the game's credit, it did a better job of giving a vague idea where you needed to head than most games have.
Hmm.
But at a certain point, I'm like, okay, wait, there's a map in the manual. I'm just looking at that and seeing where getting a gist of where I have to go.
I absolutely agree. The game is very good at telling you where you need to go next. So the simple fact that you can stop and talk to your party at any moment and have them remind you what you're supposed to be doing, that's fantastic. More games should have that as an option. Um, and I felt like there was not there was I figured out pretty quickly the game didn't expect me to explore. The game expected me to go in the vague direction it gave me, and just whatever I hit next is where I'm supposed to be. So I never really felt like on the overworld I got lost much. In
Yeah.
the dungeons, we'll talk
Oh.
about later.
Well, and so I got one more piece of trivia. So we talked about how these are content that was cut from the Sega CD release. So this game also has a number of sort of censorship's not the word because that's when like the government does it, but toned down things.
I'd still count that as censorship. Censorship is more than the government.
Okay, so self-censorship.
Yeah.
They chose to remove these things for being too adult. There, when it was localized from Japan to North America, we lost the Shadow Mirage enemy because it's basically just a nude woman. Like, like there's no nipples or any details or anything, but it's very clearly the shape of a nude woman. And there was also Grizz would get the bloody axe weapon, which had a unique animation where blood would actually splatter when he hit the enemy. Um, but the code is still on the cartridge. It looks like you had a thought about that, Ryan.
Oh no. I just it's I actually one of the things I did like about it, since you bring up Grizz's axe, is I liked that each weapon had a like unique color or vibe to the swing. I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I appreciated that too.
At one point I had Alice throwing two different types of boomerangs, and I loved that one of them was green and one of them was red. It's like, oh, that's a cool little touch.
And it's the little things that I really appreciate about these old games. So totally agree.
Oh yeah.
So before we get into the Joy Pros and the Joy Cons of Phantasy Star 4 on the Sega Genesis, what's our history with this game and how far did we each get? Can we start with you, Mike?
Yeah, so I had never heard of this game. I had not heard of this as a franchise.
Hmm.
And then as far as how far I got with this, so I had gotten, first of all, just like because in general thing, because it's this post-civilization thing, there's a bit that I feel like parts of the game are structured as though they're supposed to be a reveal of the amount of futuristic technology kicking around. But like, I feel like the manual and stuff made it clear that that was there. So there's a bit where I'm like, this feels like this was supposed to be more like or like an Echo the Dolphin-y thing of like, oh, this is shifted in a genre that I didn't realize it was going to, except it told you about it, which I thought was a little bit odd. So I got far enough to really start reaching that, which is like the bio laboratory. And I think the furthest I got was pretty much into there's like a meteor that you're supposed to, I think you're supposed to explore. I did explore. That didn't go great for me. And a giant sandworm that just wrecked me. And that's about where I stopped because I looked at this and went like, I think I have to grind a lot more. And so I'm not going to.
You are choosing not to race at that point.
Yeah, but that is the point at which I stopped, which is probably 3 to 4 hours in
Okay.
ish.
Yeah, you got a good taste. Ryan, what about you? What's your history with the game?
So I've definitely heard the name Phantasy Star before. I know because it doesn't surprise me. As a matter of fact, while we were just before we started recording here, I noticed one of my Steam friends is playing Phantasy Star 2 online. It's clearly still going. I'd heard the name before. I never played a Phantasy Star game, but so all of this was very new to me. But I got a little farther than Mike did. I reached the point where so just after that, after you face off against one of the big bad for the first planet, you get the ability to travel off planet, and you end up on a second world, like because this world's kind of like a desert slash savannah world, and the other world is an ice world. But when I landed there, I looked up and it was 3 in the morning last night, and I'm like, I need to sleep at some point before I do this recording. So I didn't get any past that. But I do know I did fight and kill the sandworm that Mike is mentioning. I did get to the bottom of the meteor crash site. Weirdly, not a whole lot happens. You get some story, and that's it.
Yeah, it's not as monumental as it makes it seem.
The first planet's desert, and the second planet is ice.
Mhm.
Is the third planet forest? Is there a third
No.
planet and is it forest? Okay,
The third planet is an asteroid belt.
Yeah.
okay, which that is still after the ice. This is still a Star Wars format.
Funny you should mention that. I very distinctly noticed as I was playing that right about the time we got to we were talking to Seed. We were talking to that
Computer.
to the first tech dungeon you go to. I sat back and I went, "Wait a minute. We're in the Death Star. This is the Star Wars party. Chaz is Luke, Alice is Leia, Han is Han, and Grizz is Chewie."
You're right. Oh my God, that's really funny.
It's like the characters aren't anything like one another, obviously, I would never compare Han to Han, but it felt like, and immediately my brain immediately went, wait a minute.
It's funny because you meet Han later, but it's not Han, it's Rune. Phantasy Star
Yeah.
fans know Rune is the Han Solo of this game.
Oh yeah.
Weird, only because I think in that area that I looked at it and went, it gave me weird vibes of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and
Yeah,
Deep Thought.
I can see it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I used to longingly stare at pictures of this game when I was a kid in Sega Visions magazine. I'm showing Ryan and Mike. I'm so happy I found it. I found a copy of the spread that I used to stare at as a kid. Ryan's tilting his head. Do you guys notice something out of place?
Now, can you explain to me why Penn and Teller are sideways on the edge of this screenshot?
Sure can. So this was the very special Penn and Teller edition of Sega Visions magazine. Are you guys aware of why Penn and Teller had a Sega magazine devoted to them?
Oh, because they're Smoke and Mirrors game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
Desert Bus.
Desert Bus for Hope.
Uh-huh.
So it's funny to
Love
think that
Desert Bus.
but little Jeremy, I remember reading about Desert Bus and like it was hilarious, and I was like, I didn't realize it'd become A, an actual game, and B, a charity sensation that's rocked the internet for like decades. So, like I said, I would stare at pictures of this game. The big artwork of the monster fight seems so epic. There was these vehicles. There would be a part where you'd be inside the cockpit, and I wanted to play it so badly. But when this game debuted, it had a suggested retail price of $99 in 1995. Ryan,
Good
any
God.
guess what that is adjusted for inflation? Let's do Prices Right rules. Okay, Phantasy Star 4 goes on sale today, $99 in 1995. What is the retail price, Mike?
172.
172. Ryan.
Oh. 149.99.
Mike wins is $206.36 adjusted for inflation. But adjusted for inflation, it's like the cost of like a Switch Lite. Like, that's wild. So
Oh.
I looked it up. This was before games had a, suggested price for all the games on the console. Like, like even though it's $80 these days, most games go for $80. But so this is back in the day when if they printed less, they would suggest that stores charge more for them. So it's kind of the collector's gem. So I was really excited to play it first time. Never played Phantasy Star before. And 23 hours later, I Nintendo did beat this game, boys.
Nintendo! Family computer.
Very nice.
And I'm glad I did. So can we go over the Joy Pros and Joy Cons of Phantasy Star 4? Ryan, let's start with you. What'd you like about this game?
First thing I will say that I really liked, and I feel like everything I'm going to say that I like, I'm going to come back to in the next section and tell you something about it I didn't.
Fair.
First thing I liked the cutscenes. I liked that we took a moment out to show like these close-ups of the characters because, there's a lot of big emotions in these cutscenes. And I felt like having, yeah, that one right there, the ending of the petrification curse was such a big moment. And I'm glad that the screen didn't just flash and suddenly everyone was moving around.
I was just gonna say I totally agree. I love these cutscenes, and I've seen this in games before, but not to this extent. It's like every story beat has this beautifully animated comic book style still frame, and the genius of it, I'm getting goosebumps, is that they show one frame at a time.
Mhm.
So your brain is filling in the gaps and making what felt like full-on cutscenes in a game released in 1995. And it also, I thought, Ryan, if you'd agree, added a lot of character to the characters.
Yes, definitely.
Like, I liked Breath of Fire's characters, but you always see them as these tiny little sprites. And so to see their expressions and their emotions in their faces through just still images, super dope. Mike, do you like these?
Yeah, no, I think that was definitely one of the strongest things this had going for it is those really did have a good style to them, and they made this feel a lot richer than if this had just been, just the text of what's happening or something.
Yeah, this is a lot of text, but the moment I realized the game was doing that and was going to keep doing that, I was like, okay, now you've got my attention, because I think this is probably the most story heavy game we've ever covered, Mike. I don't know if you'd agree.
I mean, it's this or Yoshi.
Symbolically. Mike, what'd you like about it?
I think the two things that stand out to me most, one would be that, and the other would be the music.
Oh yeah, music was brilliant. So many bops. So many bops.
And like I read somewhere on like Reddit recently that like people say that like the Super Nintendo had a better sound card. Like that's just fact. That's just technology comparison. But there's something butt rocky about the good Genesis. Like I'm like, yes, let's go Phantasy Star. And big step up from Shining Force, because I don't know if you remember, Mike, but like we liked Shining Force 1. Ryan loves Shining Force. Every town in that game has the exact same music track. Every battle has the exact same music track. So I was like really grateful to have felt like, the developers at Sega. I don't know how many people worked on both games, but this was a lot more pleasant to listen to.
And then this also did something that I was a bit surprised by for a lot of like just like your interaction with characters and stuff was because I think when you just get into dealing with like the more standard NPCs, I kind of just expect, especially a game of this era, like if you interact with an NPC and they're going to have some generic-y line, like just that's it. In this, if you do that interaction and then you get an additional person added to your party and interact with them again, there's additional responses because like the people in your party have responses to things. And so they actually managed to be like, okay, we're going to have enough so that depending on if this person's in your party or not, there'll be additional comments. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that if they didn't do, no one would ever complain about.
Yeah, 100%. But what a nice way to make it feel like these are actual characters and not just Pokemon you're battling with, right? Because you get their take on little situations. And it's never like, super story important, but there are moments where like I won't spoil it, but there are very emotional beats in this game later on. And so NPCs who had relationships with characters you've met in the past will like reminisce and it will hit differently for different members of your party. I totally forgot about that. I completely agree. I like the characters overall. Let's kind of just keep this conversation going with the characters. I don't know if you guys had any favorites. We have 9 total. No, well, 10 total? 10 total, including Chaz. We got Chaz, the teenage hothead, Ren, the stoic android, Rika, the test tube baby, Grizz, the beastly tagalong, Alice, the femme fatale, Demi, the woman in the chair, Raja of the drunken dad jokes, Kira, the obligatory. What's that say, guys? Something girl?
Esper Girl?
Esper girl, Han the anxious academic, and Rune the second coming of Christ. I mean Lutz. I don't know if I should have. Oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't have spoiled that. Uh-oh, I don't want to cut this, Mike.
I have no reference point, so
Okay, well, do you guys have any favorites?
For the amount that I played, I think I've got to go with Alice, if for no other reason that she's the first one that you start off with in the party, and you very quickly add Han. And I just really appreciate the attitude that Alice has of basically charging Han to come along, like
Those
from the
interactions were
get-go, and
great.
just keeps upping it. And there's just this attitude. It's like, yeah, yeah, fine, you can come. It's going to cost you. It's like, all right, fine. This isn't fair. It's like, I don't care. Give me the money.
And that's what I meant by like Masato energy is that she's super competent. She has this huge reputation of being this legendary hunter. So the setting of this game is that it's like the we mentioned earlier, a civilization of high technology has collapsed, and so they basically go back to the medieval ages in terms of technology, and they discover remnants of the old world. But part of that society collapsing is that the world is full of these biological monsters, and so people who are good at dealing with the monsters are called hunters. And that's the premise of the beginning of the game.
The old world would have also just had biological monsters. Like most monsters are biological.
Okay, okay. Okay, Mike. What would you call it? Biologically engineered.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I love Alice though.
the only reason the Masato to Alice comparison doesn't work for me is Alice is not trying to sleep with Chaz.
Uh,
Because Chaz is our Shinji.
Alice, the Masato did not try to sleep with Shinji.
Didn't she drunkenly hit on him at one point?
Whatever. The world was ending, okay? Things got weird. Listen. Masato was a complicated and troubled character, but she ain't no perv, okay? Mike, did you have or sorry, Ryan, did you have a favorite character? Now that I crap all over your takes.
Honestly, I only knew Raj for one town, and I already love him.
Raja, yeah.
Yeah, Raja. Yeah, no, he seems like he was going to be a lot of fun.
And easily the most helpful. I'm gonna call him a side character because one thing I like about this game is that usually I have this big anxiety about RPGs of who do I have in my party? Who's the right one to bring and who's the right one to leave behind? This game only like has you do that towards the end of the game. And for the most part, whoever's in your party is entirely story driven. So I kind of took my hands off the steering wheel and go, okay, I'm just going to enjoy this because I don't have to worry about that. And I liked it. But Raja has the most helpful abilities. He can buff and heal your team the best out of any of the characters.
You gotta have a cleric, man. Every good party has a cleric.
I do, my heart breaks for him though, because he's the kind of joking one. He's silly. He's always saying things that annoy Chaz, but his jokes don't translate. Like that's a criticism this game got when it came out, is that translating from Japanese to English, a lot of the punchlines just don't make sense anymore.
It definitely felt in some of the cutscenes, especially, that there were lines that were missing context, almost like they were direct translations as opposed to interpretations, which, in my opinion, if you're going to translate a game, you should not direct translate. You have to interpret. If that means you have to adjust jokes so that they land, do it. You're not going, it's not about the exact text of the story, it's about the vibes.
Yeah. You say that like it's a controversial decision. Do some people get weird about it?
There is I've only ever been on the fringe of this, but I do know that in import, uh,
Culture.
I found out about this in context of Final Fantasy Tactics, whereas the original release of Final Fantasy Tactics was a very, very direct translation, um, which had its own issues. But then when War of the Lions, the re-release came out, they rewrote the whole thing and made it into a sort of almost Shakespearean style tragedy because the story is a tragedy. Um, but they attempted to capture the vibe of a story being told rather than the exact text. And I've seen some heated arguments about which one is the better of the two.
Where did you land?
I've only played the original. I played Did I beat the original? I don't remember. I don't remember if I beat the original. I may not have. Um, but I only played the original, never played War of the Lions. I've been meaning to pick it up and play it at some point, but I would have to find it on a computer because I don't own a PlayStation. So, just never got around to it.
So, RPGs aren't usually your thing, Mike. What'd you think of the combat? Because a lot of this game is combat. You get into a lot of encounters, especially out in the wild, in the dungeons. So I feel like most of the time you spend looking at the backs of your characters at some hideous beast. Mike, what was your take on it?
So, and I think I'm gonna talk about the manual at this point because it's going to be relevant for the context on this. This is a game that I felt like the manual was super relevant for, to the point this is the first time I almost printed the manual, few pages of the manual out, because it's a fairly solid manual. Brief aside, the manual also talks about Mother Brain, which I thought was a very weird thing to see mentioned.
That's right.
We covered Metroid last time.
Yeah. But one of the things that was just so the thing that was surprising that I just didn't think I would see in a game of this era is this straight up has macros that you can program in what you would like everybody to do. So it's a one button select.
So, Mike, will you explain for computer programming what a macro is?
Um,
Or is that too obvious? I don't know.
I don't know what the definition would be. I would just kind of say that it's sort of a way of bundling a series of commands that can be run as like one command. And so that was certainly something that just like the manual explains that's a thing. It's like, okay, that's fascinating. And then it goes into a lot of detail on the combat stuff, with the two most relevant parts to that, I think, being one is simply a lot of the abilities I find to be incredibly confusingly named. I don't understand what they are. Some of them relate to things that I'm like, I understand what this is, and others I have no idea about. Where I'm just like, I'm looking at this, I do not understand how this relates at all.
It's rough. The items, the spells, the techniques, none of them, they're all represented via text, no visuals. So no little fire thing if it's a fire attack, no shield if it's a defense thing. So I'm guessing that's what you almost printed out is the part of the manual that says what these things mean.
Yeah, because straight up, it's just like, I don't know if that is an attack or a defense or a boost or what. So a lot of them is like, I don't know what's going on with this. And then there's something else in this game that I think is very interesting. It's satisfying for the exactly one that I'm aware of, which is because this is a series of up to 5 attacks in a row happening from your team, is that this has combo attacks where if two or more, I think, people do specific attacks in the right order, instead in the game, they will do a different combined attack. And so the one that the manual explains how to do is a blizzard. And it's that you have to have one person do a certain ability and another person does a separate ability, and they have to do it in the correct order and be the consecutive attacks. So if the order's wrong, if there's something else in between them, it won't work. Which loops back into why the macros matter, is that you can specify the order. So the exactly one macro I had set up was for the blizzard because it was in the manual. And the manual just lays it out as find the other 14. I think it's 15 total. And it's definitely a thing where I'm like, I hope there's a better way than just stumbling upon it, because I don't know how you really would with how varied this all is.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's a really cool idea. And they clearly developed it to have, it's actually interesting. It says there's 15, but that's actually a typo or mistake, I should say, because there's only 14. But it's so arbitrary, like what combines with what. The game never nudges you in any direction other than the one that's mentioned in the manual. So kind of breaks my heart that it was like such a cool idea, but it's so inaccessible because like I discovered two in my gameplay, Firestorm and Grand Cross. And it was a cool moment because I didn't tell them to do that attack. I was like, oh, whoa, and both your characters are on the screen at the same time, combining their abilities in a very Voltron kind of way. But I wish I had known how to do that more consistently.
It looks cool when you do it. And honestly, the cynic in me notes that somewhere like in the manual, they specifically promote the official the official strategy guide, yeah. And there's a part of me that wonders if that was like, we're gonna give them a taste of this and there's no freaking way they're figuring this out on their own.
I could see it.
So those were cool. I was good with the combat for the most part. There's a little bit of, it makes me sort of appreciate knowing how much damage something actually can take in some capacity.
Yeah, the enemies don't have life bars.
Yeah.
The combat, I felt the combat was interesting. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. Like Mike said, the names are garbage, absolute nightmare garbage. But it's a JRPG. That's what they do. I will say that like Firaga is far more obvious what it does than, like I don't even think Theo was the basic fire spell.
Can I jump in there, Ryan?
Sure.
Because I was waiting for Mike to stop so I could have you guys play a quick mini game minute. I had a game based on just how bad the names of the skills and techniques are. Would you say it's garbage?
I did print out. I went online, I found a Phantasy Star wiki. I printed out a sheet of all the skills and techniques.
All right, well, don't look at it now.
Yeah, it's on the other side of the room. It's on the other side of the room.
Good. So this game, everyone, is called Insane-onyms. Part of why the names are so bad is that they are actual words in the English language that do not do what the spell does. So here's how the game is going to work. I am going to read you the definition in the game, so what the spell or technique or item does in the game, and then I'm going to tell you the common sense, the jargon, not jargon, vernacular definition. Okay, blurt it out when you know it. Okay, I'm keeping score. Our first one, and it'll make sense after round number one. Just blurt it when you know it. Inflict paralysis on one enemy or the third rock from the sun.
Earth.
Ryan gets 1 point.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
our main character's first skill.
Earth. And I would never think, oh, Earth, that'll paralyze someone. Like, what?
Yeah, I thought it was like rock damage. Hit him with a rock.
Round number two. Awakens an ally from sleep or Hawkeye's favorite weapon.
Arrow?
I'll take that. Arrows. Arrows arises you, or it is Hawkeye's favorite weapon. Okay. Number three. Increase the attack of a non-android ally or the
Boost.
key between control and space.
Oh, wait, control in space.
Sorry, control and caps.
Oh,
Shift?
shift. That's right.
I think Mike beat you to that one.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Sorry for naming the wrong keys, you guys. Someone jumped in there, and don't be afraid to interrupt me. I think it'll still work. All right, violently freeze one enemy or the amount of energy produced per second.
Wait, what does ice damage?
Boom.
Why does it not do lightning damage?
Right?
God damn, I thought it was lightning damage.
Nope. Ice. Mike, I saw you make the W sound and you hesitated. All right. Instantly defeat one enemy or the loudness button on your remote control.
God, there are so many insta-kill spells in this game.
A ridiculous amount.
An obscene number.
Anyone have a TV remote next to him? The loudness button.
Mute, volume,
I'm not going to give you that one. It was Vol.
vol. Okay, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Vol's the spell, and crash is Grizz's technique that insta-kills.
Instantly defeat all enemies or a term for frat house friends.
Bros?
Yes, Mike! Bros! All right. Heals all non-android allies or a charming farming simulator.
Oh, this is like human aid or H aid or oh God, what the hell was it?
Mike, charming farming simulator.
Med something? I used it a lot because it's the first skill you get that revives people who have fallen.
Well, you should have known it was Stardew.
Oh no, that's an item, isn't it?
It is. I'm including items.
Yeah, okay. No, I was thinking of
Oh, spells.
what's her name's ability. She has an ability that heals the whole party and revives anyone who's been knocked down. I was wondering what the Stardew did.
Okay, so Ryan needs this one to make it a tie. Teleport you out of a dungeon or a boarding house for nubile anime exchange students.
Oh.
A boarding house for nubile anime exchange students, Mike. Think about our high school.
Oh God, I can see it. I can see it, but I can't say it.
What was the name of that anime where the guy had to clean the boarding house?
Reese? Whisk?
That's Love Hina.
Hina!
Hina. Okay.
All right, you guys want the final one?
Sure.
Let's make it worth double points so we can tie game. Crush all your enemies in a gravity well, or go over this in a barrel.
Oh, falls. No?
Niagara?
Niagara, Mike wins.
Ah.
But you see how confusing that
Oh, that's
was?
right. That's the advanced version. That's like the level 3 version of the spell, right?
That's extra confusing having not seen like half of those things in the game.
Yeah, well, you won, Mike, so don't whine too much.
I think what the problem is with the spells is, okay, you want weird names, great, we can have weird names. You need a text box on screen that describes it.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of those are things like I will use one of those examples, and that is the actual thing was Nagra. So it's not even like it's Niagara. It's not a word at all.
Close enough, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you look at those and you're like, I don't understand what's going on with any of these. And it's not even like even if those were words I knew and they were using them in weird ways, it would at least help because that's something that I could lock on to. But like this set of letters has zero meaning for me beforehand. I cannot keep track of what's what. And it did mean that like I didn't use a lot of the abilities because I just couldn't keep track of it, which is a shame because one of the things I was surprised by is as your characters are leveling up and they're learning new abilities, and initially it was like, because they start off like, okay, he has like 1, technique or skill, and I don't know how those. I think those are different things, and it's weird. But it's like okay, it's like one technique. It's like okay, and clearly there's like 4 lines there. It's like okay, I've got another one. All right, and then I had like okay, I've got 4, so this must be leveled up. And then the character got another one. I'm like, the heck happened there? Because I was at. It's like well, he's learned a new thing. It's like, did I lose one? And it's like, no, this scrolls over, and I can get multiple pages of abilities. I'm like,
There's a tiny little arrow in the top right corner.
yeah, and I did not like I at a minimum I thought initially I was like, okay, 4, it's full, I'm done. And then it's like learned a new one. I'm like, am I gonna have to do one of those like Pokemon things where it's like choose a move to forget? It's like, oh no, it's just learn. This is almost a double-edged sword where it's like, okay, I guess like this is more stuff. Like I appreciate that you're not taking things away and it's just building, but on the other hand, when none of these make sense to me, this is confusing.
That's the real genius of the Pokemon battle system is the fact that everyone gets 4 attacks, and so you learn what those do really well, and so you know exactly who to call in any given situation.
I thought the real genius was that it was dogfighting that you didn't have to feel guilty about.
Okay, but in dogfighting, Mike, it's not like your dog has 4 attacks. Actually, probably less. Oh, this is weird. Mike, why'd you do this? I if I can say something. So I mean, are we moving? Can I say a few more things I like about the game? Because we're kind of venturing into Joy Con territory. Did you so Ryan, you got to the second planet, so does that mean you got to the first vehicle segment?
Yes, I love the Land Rover or the Land Raider or whatever it's called. I love that vehicle. It's adorable.
And it's I like it too, gameplay wise. Did you because it's basically the fast travel in this game.
Yeah.
But you unlock it quickly. Like it's
Oh
you're
yeah,
not
yeah.
playing. I was surprised at how quickly I found it, and so the vehicle segments in this game are really genius game design because they do 3 things simultaneously. One, they have turned the overworld map into a Metroidvania, where it's like, okay, here's a quicksand ocean. I can't get across that, but once you get the Land Rover, you can. On the ice planet Desolus, once you get the Ice Digger vehicle, now you can break through glaciers. And then once you return back to the original planet later in the game, now you get the hydrofoil and now you can go over water. And so you are unlocking more and more of the map as the game goes on. But also, this let you grind much more easily. Ryan, did you like the combat in the vehicle?
I thought the combat was interesting because the numbers that were popping up were really big all of a sudden. Like you go from taking 15 to 30 damage an attack in dungeons, suddenly you're taking 50, 60 damage at a time to something with nearly 1,000 hit points. It felt less bad as soon as I realized, first and foremost, I have these obscenely powerful secondary attacks, so I don't have to target things one at a time.
Yeah.
I can just nuke them all from orbit.
It's the only way to be sure.
And secondly, all of that shit comes back. Your vehicle full heals every outside of every combat, and you get all of your attacks back.
You don't get your attacks back actually. You
Oh, do
full
you not?
heal. No, and so that's the one kind of restraint they put on the vehicles is that so like Ryan mentioned, you have these super attacks, you nuke it from orbit. They're really cool though. Like you one of them shoots like a black hole bomb. One of them, rains missiles down from the sky. And it's the same combat system as before, but it's got kind of this fun sort of Star Tours kind of a heads up display or dashboard, I should say, at the bottom half of the screen. But what it's doing is it's letting you defeat monsters without your actual characters taking damage because the vehicles heal between every round, but their special attacks, your ammunition, only gets replenished when you rest at an inn or step on one of the instant heal panels that appear later in the game. So they're not making it, I think, too easy on you, but a lot easier on you, and I appreciated it.
Well, what's interesting, and I will say this before we get to the cons, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is an interesting thing. So a lot of the stuff I do in my free time when it comes to RPGs is Dungeons and Dragons. And a huge part of combat in Dungeons and Dragons is the concept of action economy. The idea that every character only has a certain amount they can do per round. And what's really interesting about this game is because you A, have such a big party, and B, can face so many enemies at once with little access to AoE, outside of, Alice's attack is an AoE, but very little outside of that can hit the entire enemy party at once. And it forces you to think tactically, especially when you're low on party members. Like right at the beginning where you've only got 3, if you see 4 things lined up against you, it means that the enemy is going to be hitting you harder than you hit them. Even though, they may not do as much damage, but they're going to be going more often, which means a higher chance of critical hits and a higher chance that the engine will decide that all 4 of your enemies are going to attack the same character who's not the first one in your party all at once and kill them. I had Han die so many times to just being dogpiled by a single round of bad dice rolls,
And I will say this, and it will be no comfort to Mike, because Mike plays with integrity the ways they did back in the 90s. He writes down passwords. He doesn't use rewind or save states. I was delighted to find out that upon rewinding this game, the enemies' actions would turn out differently. So if it was like a random thing where it's like they have a spell that hits one random party. It took out Han. Rewind. Now it hit Grizz and he has more life, so he's okay. It made cheating my way through this game so much easier, but another thing I liked about it was this recurring battle with Dark Force. Mike, did you get to one of these Dark Force fights?
I do not believe that I did.
Okay. But Ryan, you got to at least the first one.
Yeah, the first time you encounter Dark Force is over Dio's shoulder.
Right.
Because it wasn't Dio the whole time. And so you just get this vague feeling. I mean, I called it nightmare because that was the only term I had for it at the time. But I never actually got to fight him.
Yeah. So what's Ryan's referring to? Dio, time to go. He's the kind of charismatic magician who's kind of an a-hole and has all these like fanatic followers. He even inspires one woman to do the holy ghost on the ground, like she's holy ghosting because she loves Dio so much, or she's cursed. I don't know, one or the other. But so you fight him, and it's the thing where you can't win. It's a boss fight you have to lose, which is super annoying. I don't like when games do that. Or if you want to do that, like Mike said, don't let me use items. And there's this evil deity that is hovering as just a face behind him. You come to learn it's called Dark Force. Later in the game, you fight it again, and that's emerging from this wall of technology, and it's just kind of the torso, or really the pecs on up. Next time you fight it, now it's down to its waist, and it's entering our world. And every time you fight this enemy, it's getting bigger, and it's getting more and more in our world. And so I really appreciated it in like this Stephen King kind of Lovecraftian horror sense, because the monster design of Dark Force is sick. He looks like some kind of demonic vampire crab Darth Vader thing. I don't know. I liked it. Did you guys like the enemy designs, like the look of them?
He's giving Nemesis vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought the monsters all looked fine. Like they were good monster designs, but I won't say they're like stellar monster designs,
Okay.
Although obviously this is my first experience, seeing Dark Force, and he looks badass. I will not disagree with you there. Although it's easy to tell why Dio was so popular with his men. He bought them prostitutes.
Yeah, he did. I caught that.
I think for the enemies that I saw, there wasn't much that stood out, and some of them just like look a bit weird. There's something like I do not really understand what I was looking at.
Like the weird like mushroom pustule thing, and it's like kind of shaking at you.
Yeah, the ones that kind of felt like they had like metal supports and their legs dangling, and it's like that's not what's going on. It's just I don't know what this is, and that's my.
I got a kick out of the first time the blob enemies merged.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yep.
So the last thing I'll mention that I really like about this game, and there's a lot I like about this, but did you guys so Mike, you didn't, I don't think, because you wouldn't have gotten to this point, but Ryan, did you mess with the Hunters Guild side quests at all?
Yes, I did go hunt down the big sandworm. Honestly, I thought when it came to the combat, and since this is a positive, I will say this is a positive, the boss fights are great.
Yeah.
Like the single fights against one really hard as nails enemy were fantastic. The fight against Dio's fantastic. The fight against the sandworm is fantastic. Hell, I'll even say that the first boss that you face, the little gribbly squid face looking dude that pops out the smaller monsters, I think that was a fantastic tutorial boss because he doesn't hurt you. He just spawns dudes. And so you're like, oh, I need to make sure to keep these guys, keep the clutter down, you know. So yeah, I thought the boss fights were all fantastic. And it gave you an excuse to use the fun spells like the boost. Like it's like, here, let's, like the first couple rounds, every boss fight I had Alice in the party for, she spent the first couple rounds casting buff spells on everybody in the party. It's like boost everyone's agility, boost the physical attack of the physical attackers, That was fun. I liked that.
Me too. It's needed. You cannot beat the bosses without buffing your party. And so there is sort of a rhythm to it. And then, later in the game, enemies will remove your buffs, and it's like, ah, damn it, gotta put those back up again.
So that probably hits exactly on where I struggled with this, because I did reach the sort of Hunter's Guild assignments, and the first one is this giant sandworm thing that just annihilated me. And my take on that was that I was basically going to have to grind a massive amount. And it sounds like really what this is because of the way this is structured and not knowing what did what, and not physically having a manual to be comparing stuff as I was going, is I wasn't using buffs because I didn't know where they were.
And, and I will say, I think you got led us astray a little, because the Hunters Guild quests, I think they're neat. They have some of the better storytelling moments of the game, purely optional. So what Mike's referring to is that later in the game, you get to this building, and there are side quests you can take on for the promise of rewards, money. And, leveling up your equipment is crucial in this game. And it does a pretty good job of giving you the item shop you need to survive the next dungeon. And so I very rarely found myself like short of cash and just, loading up, getting ready for the next part. But Ryan, you disagree?
No, no, no. I have a moment of anger about that statement that you always have the shop you need. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. But so anyway, so the Hunters Guild quests I thought were fun. Mike, what were you going to say?
I was actually say I disagree. I had several spots that I was having to go back and grind so I could get equipment, and I also do not think it's particularly intuitive what's actually the improvements. It makes me appreciate. I think both we've had stuff that has more clearly in the manual been like, these are your hierarchy of stronger weapons, and also a thing that this doesn't do, which is the ability to just see, if I buy this, which stats will this increase or decrease. So you'd have to buy it, and I did have situations where I thought I was buying something better and it was not.
I thought before you purchase it, you see how the change it's going to make.
No, you just see who can have it.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also leads to the other weird side thing, is that apparently crowns are the female equivalent of helmets, and I don't know why that has to exist at all. But yeah, no, it was very frustrating. And honestly, I was having to start leveraging like outside information to a certain point of like, I think at least I got as far as having titanium and carbon fiber and ceramic in the mix. And I can kind of rank these, but like I'm not fully sure on this, and I do not know how a child would do this.
What's really funny too is that okay, Han specifically, I ran into this problem with. Han can use shields, but only certain shields.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be almost he's supposed to kind of be a medic character, I got the vibe of, which means he's using quote unquote light armor, which is like the kind of stuff that you would be putting on Rune as well, which meant that he could only use shields made of the material that gets used in light armor. So whereas like the main characters like Chaz and Alice are getting carbon fiber, but then Rune and Han are using ceramic at the same time. And because Chaz can use a ceramic shield or a carbon fiber shield, but Han can only use the ceramic shield, it's just weird. Even though in the shop tab, it tells you that Han can use any kind of shield. Anytime you hover over a shield, he always lights up. But if you buy certain types and you go to equip him, then you just can't. It just won't let you.
That's dirty. It did lead to one of my favorite moments though towards the end of the game, because like I knew the last boss was gonna be tough, and I got a tip off the internet that Raja was the one to bring with you at the end of the game. So this game you equip each hand, and like Chaz's swords take both hands. Ren's plasma rifle takes both hands. Raja can only use one-handed weapons. He has no two-handed option. So the person on the internet told me, just equip Raja with 2 shields. He's not doing any damage. He's just sitting there like an egg, and he's purely for buffs and heals, and that was the key. Was there anything else we liked before we get into the Joy-Cons?
Wait, just for clarification. Wait, so the shield is a passively used thing then?
So it does increase your like defense, but then also like your defense as in like you take less damage from attacks. But also if you choose the defend option, it gives you a better.
I thought it only did something if you used the defense, if you used it as an action.
Oh, really? Maybe it was just all in my mind.
I mean, well, if someone's saying like just have 2 shields, like in my mind that makes no sense. That may well be just that's a mechanic I didn't realize was even happening.
Mm.
And I'm briefly just going to say I find it amusing that Grizz, which I guess the debate as to what that is, the closest thing Grizz looks like to me is possibly a Furby, but
Yes, oh my God, very Furby coded.
Oh yeah, yeah.
but also I kind of clocked him more as a bat, which then made me thinking that the Batman thing avenging his parents seemed apropos.
Yeah, see, but Bama's not actually avenging his parents, though. He's not going after Joe Chill the whole time. But I get what you're going for. That's funny, Mike.
Well, I will say one thing real quick before we go on, and this is just a small comment on the storytelling that I enjoyed because I came into this having never played the previous games, so obviously there's context I was missing. But I absolutely love that about right towards the end of the first planet, or actually probably when I landed on the second planet, and I saw that everyone here was these green Raja people. I'm like, wait, the Green Raja people are the natives here. Grizz and his people are the natives where we came from. Holy shit, all the humans are from the blown up planet. We're aliens.
Right.
We are the invading species. And it's like because that's the thing in The Witcher too, is that humans are not native to the planet that The Witcher takes place on.
Mm, I didn't know that. That's cool.
The elves are. The elves are the native species of that planet. And then humans came in when the conjoining of spheres and lore.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's cool.
It's also kind of harrowing when you consider there's exactly one city of Grizz's people left on the planet. So humans gonna human.
I guess we are, aren't we? Okay, so let's get into the Joy-Cons of this game. Ryan, I'm so happy to hear you have so many positive things to say about it because you had a pretty horrific first impression of Phantasy Star IV. So I was wondering if you could describe to our listeners what happened and could you rate your disdain on Dark Forces 1 through 4 as far as like how horrible they were? Which evil form of Dark Force was your anguish?
Okay, so bit of a story. So I don't play retro stuff very often, mostly just for this podcast, honestly. So I am used to autosaves, and I am used to when you die, you get kicked back to the most recent autosave, or you just get kicked back to town. Hell, Shining Force did that. If your party wipes in Shining Force, it just kicks you back to the last town. Phantasy Star 4 takes you straight to the opening credits. If you have not saved, you can go yourself. It is brutal to die in this game. And for a very long time, you do not get anything that can res dead party members. It is just you go back to town and you rest. So I got to, Tanoe? The Grizz's people's village, which incidentally, between their furry faces and the absolute horrific earworm that is their town's theme song, I immediately went to Ewoks. Because I'm like, oh God, it's as bad as Yub Yub.
I like Yub Yub.
Mina's good.
So I got there. I went to meet with the guy. I walked around town and talked to the folks, but I'm like, it's weird. This place is like, oh yeah, we make titanium armaments and armor, but there's no weapons shop. There's no armor shop. What the heck? It's probably not important. Maybe it'll open it up later. Maybe those 2 tents I can see that don't have entrances, maybe that's what it is. Anyway, so I go to talk to the village elder. We sexualize Alice in order to move the plot along. You have to ask for Alice's measurements in order to proceed the plot. So you go down into their basement. Now, that basement is a difficulty spike. You go from taking 10 damage per hit to taking 20 to 30 per hit. And when Han at the time only has like 40 to 50 hit points, if you didn't spend time grinding, he can get taken down just by bad luck rolls. You face four things, two of them decide to hit Han. Wow, you're down a party member and you can't get them back up. So there's a massive difficulty spike there. So the first time I played this, I went in and I was like going, oh, this is getting a little dicey. I should probably leave. Run. Can't escape. Crap. Hit, hit, hit. Second player down. Crap. Run. Can't escape. Hit, hit, hit. Three players down. Well, run. Can't escape. Hit, hit, hit. Fourth player dies. I'm like, oh, well, crud. Goes to the main title screen. I'm like, wait, click. New game's my only option.
Oh, God. 3 hours lost.
3 hours lost. And then I turned the emulator off in disgust, forgetting that it had a rewind feature.
Right.
And so that was a week ago. And
despite all that, you came back to the game, though.
I did. I came back to it last night from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Yeah, no, I grounded out. So I got back to that part, played it safe, put Grizz at the front of the party, and ground my way through down to the bottom, got the stuff I needed, and got done. And I'm like, okay. Now, mind you, in coming back, I had not bothered to talk to any of the townsfolk outside of the few, like I knew special interactions for Han in his hometown, because I felt like that had story relevance. So but I didn't talk to anybody else because I'd heard what they'd had to say. But as I'm coming out, I'm realizing, oh, they never showed me where this weapons shop or armor shop is. I guess you just don't get titanium. I guess Grizz just gets the only titanium in the game, and good for him. Wait, I've never actually checked these market stalls.
Oh.
And I went stall to stall, checking them, and found the hidden weapons, armor, and tool shops.
That's annoying.
So I went in with subpar equipment, and that's why it was so difficult, is because I did not find these unmarked weapon and tool shops before I went down. And that actually is one of my biggest gripes with this game, is this game does not tell you anything. So much of this game is obtuse, and so much of this game is not broadcast to the player. And that is honestly one of the things that bugs me the most about it.
And your warning about that actually meant that I went through several towns being like, I really got to find where I can save before I eventually realized that's off the start menu. It's not a thing in game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, there's got to be a building around. Like, okay. Because I was thinking, because some of the other stuff was where it's like, okay, you can't save at like the first town, but like by the time you get to, like town 2 or 3, there's options. So I'm like, where is this? And eventually I'm like, wait a minute, start. Oh, it's been here all along. I've been terrified of having the same thing happen to me. And then the weapon shop in that village is exactly one of the areas that I tried moving on, couldn't. I went back and grinded until I had enough money to upgrade everything, because I did not have enough money for that.
Yeah.
Grinded or ground? Grounded. Ground would be coffee. But yeah, it's like the combo system of like being able to save anywhere is amazing and very unique in 90s RPGs. Never tells you can do it.
Not everywhere, but
most
many places, yeah.
Yeah, you can't save in a dungeon, I think, is the one restriction.
Yeah.
But you can save in the open world, you can save in the towns, and Ryan never did. And then, like, it's just rough.
I just use save states at this point.
Yeah, and then, my other Joy-Con, Ryan touched on it already, but like this game, when it was released, it was criticized for the way it treated its female characters. There is this weird... Did you get to the burlesque show, Ryan?
The strip club? Yes, the Hunter's strip club, absolutely. Did you get backstage?
I did get backstage, and that was neat only because that backstage area goes way more further than I would have expected. There's multiple rooms to the point that you can end up behind the counter of one of the items, and the woman gets kind of uncomfortable.
If you keep going, you find treasure chests with a valuable weapon in it.
I saw that, yeah. But it's just like, it doesn't serve any plot purpose, and like there's this soldier who wants the girl to get closer to him. It's just gross. Alice is clearly badass. She is the player character for the first planet. She's in the lead of your party. I thought that was really cool. And I'm like, look at this, boss energy. Yeah, but every character just sexualizes her. This one kind of made me laugh though. You can actually walk into a woman's room and she says, "I'm still getting undressed. Get out." Which means she wants you to come back when she's fully undressed, but she's still getting undressed. So get out.
That is
But
not even the part that I noticed that was odd was that the doorway has nothing to close it off, and that
yeah,
seemed odd. But
yeah.
I didn't even notice that part of it.
I mean, Jack and I are watching 90 Day Fiance. This guy just moved into a house with his girlfriend that has no doors and two children. So he's awesome.
Oh.
Ah, I wanted two children and no doors. Wait, yeah, no children and two doors. That's it.
I know what you're going for, Mike.
Yeah.
Then there's the prostitute in the secret Dio barracks in the back of God, I forget the town's name, but the town right before you go to Dio's castle. There's a small section of the town that you have to reach by like going out and skirting along the edge of the walls. And if you get back there, you find a little tavern with a bunch of Dio's soldiers in it. If you go upstairs in the tavern into the back room, there's a female sprite, and she looks at Chaz and goes, "Well, you're a little younger than I'm used to working with, but this can work."
Yeah.
And it's like,
And
wow, this is just a prostitute.
Oh, so you found I was wondering because the manual does mention that around town sometimes you can kind of go outside the town and work your way around if you don't go too far. And I never saw a spot where that applied as far as I got.
It was the only one I found where that could happen.
in the Hunters Guild town, Mike, there's a bakery. And it's funny because like to get there, you have to skirt the outside of the town edge. And the guy even says, like, sorry, this terrible location. We really got to move the business. But you need that item to solve one of the side quests.
Yeah, which I feel that being a thing that only comes up very rarely, I think fills into a pattern of this game that I didn't like, which was things that felt like there you have to keep checking because eventually it's going to be useful, but the hit rate is so small that it's frustrating, which is like things like, oh, well, if you actually check this cabinet, there's something. I'm like, I checked so many cabinets and it's the same thing. Or I checked so many bookshelves with generic messages that like I stopped. And it's like, even if that varied a bit, it would be like, okay, these are different things, eventually just pay off. And a lot just felt like so few or anything that then you stop and you miss the particularly notable ones.
And what's interesting about that too is the game's mechanics actively dissuade you from checking things, because if you try to walk up to a stall or a pot or a table, anything that you could conceptually walk past, the game's mechanic kicks in and makes you walk around it, which is great in the dungeons, so you can like skim along like an uneven wall without having to press up and up, left, up, left, up, left. You just hold left and your guy kind of walks along the wall. But it makes it, you have to like very clearly press up once just to make sure your character walks up to the table but doesn't start to walk around it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so do you not want me to check out what's on this table? You've clearly put effort into writing a small little blurb of text. The functionality of the game dissuades you from checking this stuff out.
Yeah, and I think it felt like two different parts of the team both did two very good things, and they just don't work well together. Is like, imagine the like you are walking through standard sort of town, and they've got like trees and scenery things that are physical objects a character can't just like pass through or over. This game, as you approach one of those, if it's a small enough thing, will just have you turn and move so that you've basically walked around it naturally.
Right.
That's where it was super useful. It's like, okay, I'm walking through and there's trees and stuff, and I don't really need to stop at them, but I also don't want to have to navigate through them. That's super useful. However, as you then mentioned, things you can interact with, certain kinds of things will do that same thing. And I think it was tables seemed to be the most common.
Yeah.
That frustrated the heck out of me. And I was doing that same thing of like, some of them took 3 or 4 passes before I finally got there because it kept turning away at the last moment. And especially if you're in a smaller area where it's like, okay, no, because I move away, I hit a wall and it does the same thing. And it's like, this is annoyingly finicky to line up. And a lot of them was like, oh, there's an open book. I was like, I swear this was not worth it's this problem where they made it so finicky that like you really need this needs to really be worth it, or I am going to stop, and that is a shame because they put thought into this, but that mechanic just makes it so much harder than it should be.
Yeah. Ryan
Yeah.
mentioned the idea of like a Breath of Fire re-release. This game would really benefit from
Oh,
like
yeah.
quality of life improvements, fully animated. I mean, I don't even know if you want fully animated cutscenes. Like, I really love the style of
I
them.
don't know why. Yeah, that's not an improvement. I don't think.
I don't think we need fully animated, but actually nice looking animations would be nice. Like the bigger pictures and the cutscenes, those look okay. Those are standard 90s anime kind of stuff. But the sprites are ugly as sin.
They're small. They're small and very undetailed.
Yeah, I think keep the cutscenes, but improve the battle animation and stuff. I can see that.
Or no, I mean like the overworld sprites. I
Okay.
hate the overworld sprites.
They're all stiff.
They're incredibly stiff, and I don't know why they didn't just go with the box-shaped sprites that you see in every other JRPG, you know. I mean, yeah, they're a little less detailed, they're a little shrunk, a little chibi, but they're much more, these just look gangly and awkward.
Yeah. They remind me of like dollar store action figures.
Yes, that's exactly. Spoder Man.
Also, then combined with the I can't reach this thing in thing that just felt extra stupid because in the overworld stuff, like if you're going through like a town, all your party members are behind you in a line. So you'd have this whole like rectangle formed of your entire party as you're looping around trying to interact with someone or something. And it's like, this looks and feels so stupid.
Well, and you guys aren't even, to me, the most annoying thing about interacting with stuff, and that shouldn't be difficult. It's frustrating because like you've never in real life, you'd never walk up to a person to try to talk to them and get too close and veer around them accidentally
Or fuse into them as they're
or
moving away.
fuse into them as they're moving away. But also, if you press the A button or the C button, whatever it
C
is,
button.
in the wrong spot, Alice or Chaz will go, "Stop wasting time. There's nothing interesting here." Every time you press that button when there's nothing to look at.
Yeah. And that was the other part is that you've missed it. And because you thought that wasn't going to happen, you also have to deal with that.
And you
Yeah.
get chastised for it. Chastised
Oh yeah.
for it, Ryan. Ryan, like, come
Hey,
on,
I
get
was
on my
about to
level,
say,
buddy.
Chaz has a slightly less caustic response when you stare at nothing.
He does.
I never had to deal with it with him, so I was only ever Alistaircized.
Alice, you made an Alice out of you and me. Anything else to say, guys, that we didn't like about the game?
Oh, I will say, so I guess this is kind of mixed. I like that you are incentivized to explore the dungeons because, first off, I find it ironic that you come to a dungeon that is referred to as a literal maze, but it's not. It is just you should have turned left at the fork, dummy. Because that's all it is. It's the first room is on the right, you go into a room with the treasure chest. On the left, you proceed to the next room. In the next room, on the right is an empty room. On the left, you proceed. Next room. On the right is another treasure chest. On the left is proceeding, and then to the end.
It's a hallway. It's not a maze, it's a hallway.
Yeah, it's a hallway. It's a hallway with three little branches. Meanwhile, you get to some of the later dungeons, especially some of the tech dungeons. They're huge, absolutely huge, especially in a game that is actively difficult, actively using up your resources as you go, because the monsters hit hard and you are going to need to heal. I spent a lot, I ended a lot of combats and immediately went into the thing and hit and, used either Chaz or Rika's res a couple of times because you don't want to use them during combat because they hit harder. So you don't want to waste a turn healing when you could have been hitting. So that's what they were. They were reservoirs that spent in between combats just healing the party back up. But it got to the point where it's like, okay, I kind of want to see what's down that hallway, but I'm also tired of this dungeon and these stupid little dome tank things that hit like trucks and only take half damage.
Yeah. And some enemies, like the dimension worm I had earlier, they take 1 damage from everything except for gravity weapons. It's like there's like a little secret that I'm sure the strategy guide, Mike, would have been super helpful about.
Oh, yeah.
You use Gra, and they'll take care of it, no problem. But I'm glad you mentioned the dungeons because, as someone who's beaten this game, some of the later dungeons are brutal. The architecture makes no sense. I'm showing you this one. It's like called like Lebenic Tower or something, and it's all pustule and kind of sexual imagery. Honestly, there's very like kind of vaginal openings and like dried spit, and it's unnerving intentionally.
Very
Yeah.
Geiger, yes. And you go through these elevators that are like these openings in the wall, but there's no way to tell if you've gone upstairs or downstairs. Like there's no indication. Am I going deeper or am I rising? Because different ones will do different things. The Air Castle level, Phantasy Star fans, if you're listening to this, it's brutal because the architecture doesn't seem to line up in a logical way, and I hate that. It makes it so much more difficult. And then every 9 steps, you're getting attacked by a random enemy. You will level up very quickly if you survive, but like Ryan said, there were definite points where I was like, I'm tired of this dungeon, and I feel like better dungeons like in Zelda, you kind of enjoy being trapped in them.
And the real shame is too, because there is a reward for exploration. If
Mhm.
you explore, you will find better weapons and better armor than anything you have up to that point, and that can make a a huge difference. But like some of the dungeons lock you out once they're done. Like the first tech dungeon with Seed, there are 2 branches from the main entrance. One goes to and they're even labeled. One goes to the central location, one goes to the west wing. And I initially followed the west wing path, and it
I
led me
did
to a
find the
door.
president there was a weird choice.
Keep going, Ryan.
I was about to say, maybe he was. I didn't finish that part because I got to a place where another sign said authorized personnel only. And I'm like, oh, well, that sounds like where I'll find a boss. I'll come back after I've explored the other one. Went back to the central, got to Seed, the dungeon ended, and Seed blew himself up. So I'm like, well, guess I'm not going back after all.
Yeah, and it makes areas more difficult later because you didn't have the weapon that the devs intended you to have at that point.
Exactly, exactly.
It's just such a mix of like really good ideas and not good ideas, and good ideas poorly executed. It's just kind of a roller coaster of a game.
Yeah,
Well, guys, are you ready to declare our verdicts for this game?
absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so we have covered the Joy Pros, the Joy Cons, and every bit in between. So now it's time to declare Phantasy Star 4 as a Nintendo or a NintenDON'T. Ryan, our esteemed guest, where do you land on it?
I will definitely say that this is a Nintendo.
Nice.
Now, I am a sucker for a good story. That is why I play video games, is narrative fulfillment. And I will say, this game had me hooked. The story is absolutely, well, maybe not phenomenal. There are probably what are translation issues with some of the cutscenes. Obviously, the jokes don't always land, but the story is intriguing. A destroyed planet, malfunctioning satellites, traveling from planet to planet to trying to unravel the mystery. And honestly, that's compelling. That's good stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed the story beats in this game. The good ones, the bad ones, the heartbreaking ones. If you can play with a strategy guide spread across your legs and don't mind the frustration of very, very long dungeons, then this is absolutely a Nintendo.
Okay. Mike, you had a bit of a rougher time with it. Where'd you land?
I think the same issue. There's a lot of opaque game elements to this in terms of how mechanics are supposed to work and weapon upgrade stuff. There's a lot that it feels like quality of life improvements would go a whole, if you could just identify what things are in the game menu and buying things told you what was better, those 2 things would make this massively better without changing almost anything else. All that said, even as frustrating as that was, and even though I'm like, I don't feel that driven to go back to this because it remains frustrating, I think I'm going Nintendo because I enjoyed the amount that I had of this.
Okay.
I liked the music. I liked the characters. I liked the artistic style, the way it uses those cutscenes and uses this sort of panel artwork. like it did have a lot going for it with sort of gameplay elements making it tough. And I kind of feel like the part that I stopped is about the part where it was going to become no longer worth it for me.
Okay, but you don't regret your time with it.
Yeah, I don't.
So, and how did it control with your new Sega Genesis wireless controller?
Yes, the Sega Genesis wireless controller from Jaymo.
The one from Japan, by the way, everybody. I got him the one from Japan. Ryan, there's a 6-button Genesis controller for the Switch that is only in Japan, and I love Mike so much I got him for it for
Ooh.
Christmas. Do you feel like it? But were you happy to have it, or did it not really make a difference for this game?
I think on the actually, I tangentially I did go and play Street Fighter 2 again with that controller, and that felt much better because that uses 6 buttons.
There you
This
go.
uses 3.
Yeah.
There's a little bit with the D-pad on that felt a bit like every so often I would veer in ways I didn't expect. I can't tell if that's a controller thing or just I haven't gotten used to that and I'm used to other kinds of controls. So I'm not blaming that one yet. That was just be able to talk to me like I veered in a weird way when general navigation. It also feels smaller, and I don't know if it is or just like it's that thing of like, well, the last time I held one of these, I was a child.
I believe they are perfectly to scale. So
Okay.
I think I think we're just all big boys these days.
Yeah, that was a weird bit. I'm like, this may just be like it's been decades since I've played a Sega Genesis.
It's the gamer equivalent of revisiting your old school and trying to sit in the desk.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think it's for this game, it wasn't particularly relevant, but anything that actually really uses those 6 buttons, it's going to be much nicer.
Yeah, game changer. I adored Phantasy Star 4. It asks a lot of you. It asks for a lot of your time, a lot of your patience. I had a guide on my phone at all times so I could type in what the frickin' spell that I just unlocked does because the names don't help you. But there's just so much to enjoy here. Like you guys already touched on the cutscenes, the story elements. I gasped at plot moments when I took down one of those huge boss fights that Ryan mentioned. I cheered. I like pumped my fists in the air. That's a good boss fight. Towards the end of the game, when I realized the game was ending, I traveled back to previous planets to wrap up side quests I had missed. That's the sign of a good game. When I am that close to the finish line, I'm like, you know what? I want to spend a little bit more time with this to just get all I can out of it. Complex Magazine said this was the second best Genesis game of all time, second only to another game we covered, Mike. Any guess what it was? It's not the one you think.
I know it's not the one. I saw this in looking something up, and I can't
Yeah.
remember. I was just like, really? And I can't remember what it
Gunstar
was.
Heroes.
Right.
Gunstar Heroes. Yeah.
I was gonna guess Sonic Spinball.
That's the true best game on there.
I will defend that game until I die. I love Sonic Spinball.
Oh man.
You don't have to defend that here.
Yeah. We landed as a Nintendo on that one, but I'm landing as a Nintendo for this one. And I'm gonna bump it up to a Super Nintendo because of how invested I got in it. And what is an RPG if not a way to get invested into the story and the characters? If they've done that, at the end of the day, mission accomplished. So, with all that, we're going to call it game over for today. The final score for Phantasy Star 4 is a resounding Nintendo. Ryan, thank you again for being here. Before you get off planet, would you remind our listeners where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, sure. You can find old VODs of the days back when I was a Twitch streamer on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@warboss5. You can also find me ranting various political beliefs of mine over on Blue Sky at warboss5 there as well. And yeah, that's basically the only places. I don't do anything on Twitter anymore. I don't do anything on Twitch. So it's those two places more than anything else these days.
And where can people find the audiobook work you did?
Oh, yes. I don't obviously I can't really give you like I'm not gonna read out a whole URL.
Well, we'll put links in the show notes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, the audiobook I'm working on once again is Mortziel's Lost and Found, book one, The One-Armed Wizard. is available in both text and audiobook form. Book 2, A Noble Pursuit, is currently only available in text form, as is a third book whose name I have forgotten and have not added to my files yet. So,
Well, we'll put it in the show notes.
yes, but yeah, I'll get you a link for it.
Excellent. NE excellent, if you will. Everyone, join us next time. We'll be flapping and firing into the iconic platform shooter Kid Icarus on the NES. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcheroo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, our YouTube, Instagram, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Or even better, join our Discord where you can play games, talk games, and even make a friend or two. Big thanks to Crystal Fields for our incredible intro song, and thank you, dear listener, for liking, commenting, subscribing, reviewing, and playing along with us every step of the way. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone.
If you just played a sound effect, it didn't play. Fair warning.
Yeah.
We know that.
Okay.
Mike hates it, but Mike, for the record, I do that so that I know how long to pause. That's why I do that. And then Mike
okay.
edited. Mike, our man in the chair, edits it later. It makes it sound
Gotcha.
amazing. Unless he keeps this in out of spite just to make me feel bad. So
This might be one of those times.
might be one of those times. You never know.